أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل لو شاء الله ما تلوته عليكم ولا أدراكم به فقد لبثت فيكم أمرا من قبله أفلا تعقلون. This is verse number 17 of Surah Yunus. The translation is, say, if Allah has so willed, I should not have recited it, meaning these verses, to you, nor would He have made it known to you. I have indeed lived among you a whole lifetime before this. Will you not then understand? This verse of the Holy Quran is a very powerful argument for the truth of Holy Prophet ﷺ as it is mentioned here in the Holy Quran. And if we extend this concept where Allah Ta'ala says through Holy Prophet ﷺ that ask them, have I not spent a whole lifetime among you? That you people saw me in my childhood, you saw me in my youth, and you are witness to my truth. If we extend the same principle on acquiring or judging the truth of any prophet of Allah, this principle still holds. We see that the same principle applies to the promised Messiah ﷺ. And this verse of the Holy Quran is often mentioned by Jamaat Ahmadiyya to the opponents as an argument for the truth of the promised Messiah ﷺ. That how promised Messiah ﷺ spent his lifetime in front of the people of Punjab, particularly the people of Qadian in India. And then when he claimed to be the promised Messiah, there was a roar of opposition. The topic of today's dars is to study and understand the life of the promised Messiah ﷺ. And I started off with this verse of the Holy Quran because it is very important for us to understand the life of Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, because if we have the knowledge of what his life was about, what his childhood, how his childhood was spent, and how his youth was spent, and what kind of excellent character he had, then we can present this as an argument for his truth when we are talking to people who do not believe in promised Messiah ﷺ. I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and this Ghair Ahmadi Maulvi was giving arguments to his membership that, look, when you talk to any of members of the Ahmadiyya Jamaat, don't indulge in Wafat Masih or Khatm Nabuwat or any of those arguments. You only talk about the character of Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ. According to him, character of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. And he was trying to make a point that when we study the character of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, perhaps we will not find that beautiful character, and we will come to a conclusion that Na'uz Billah min Zalik, he was not the true prophet of God. But if we do study the character and the life of Masih Maud ﷺ, we find it like a shining light, that his life was spent in such a beautiful way, and this is a recorded history. It is not a tale of the past. So I will try in the next four durus that I have been assigned on the life of the promised Messiah ﷺ to present not necessarily the seerah aspect of it, not necessarily the character aspect of his life, but his life's incidences. How he lived his life, how was his childhood, how was his youth, what did he do? And through that itself, we will learn that how pious, how beautiful his life was. And now the character is a totally different subject. We can get into the details of the seerah of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam and the excellent character that he had. That itself is a treasure for us to follow and a good role model for us to follow. But just in the mere incidences, just in the mere occurrences of his lifetime, itself reveals how beautiful that life was. So with that introduction, I will start the first part of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam's life, and I will start this before his birth. It is also the practice of Allah the Almighty that He sends His messengers among the noble families. We see that Holy Prophet ﷺ was from the most noble family or the tribe in Mecca. He was from the tribe of Quraysh, which was the most well-known and one of the most noble families of Mecca. And similar is the case of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam. And if we study the history of his ancestors, we will find that he had such a pure lineage. The family that he came from was a very dignified family, a very noble family. We find in the ahadith that Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, or the Messiah, will be of Persian descent. We know this famous hadith of Holy Prophet ﷺ when the ayat of Surah Jumu'ah, Lamma yalhaqu bihim, was revealed. Sahaba asked who would be that Messiah, from among whom? And then Holy Prophet ﷺ put his hand on the shoulder of Hazrat Salman Farsi and he said that he would be of the Persian descent. So when we read the history of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam's ancestors, we find that he was the descendants of Haji Barlas. He was one of the famous person who was uncle of Amir Taimur. Amir Taimur is one of the famous figures in the history who was the emperor of today's Central Asia and the Uzbekistan, Turkish, Turkmenistan, that part of the world. At that time, this area, which is also known as Kish, was the ancient name of that place was Sugadiana. And the capital of Sugadiana was Samarkand. Samarkand still is a city in Uzbekistan. And I don't know if we have the map. It will be in the next slide just to show you geographically where that area is. So Sugadiana was actually one of the tribes of Iranian people. It had origins from Iran. And this is according to Encyclopedia Britannica, that the area of Samarkand, the people who came and settled there, they actually had Iranian origin. So that's where the hadith of Holy Prophet ﷺ is, that he would be from the Iranian descent. So that fulfills in the life of Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam. And then when that family moved to India, at the time of Mirza Hadi Beg, he was one of the ancestors of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam. He moved from that Samarkand area to India when Babur came to India and started the Mughal dynasty in Indian subcontinent. Mirza Hadi Beg Sahib was the one who came with Babur, with his army, and he settled in this land which is about 70 miles from Lahore and northeast of the river Beas, which is one of the small rivers in India. And he settled there, and he was one of the noble people of the area, so he was appointed as a qazi, as a judge. And back in the day, when emperors this is one of the extension. You can call it a mayor, you can call it, a local governor of the area or something to that effect. But he was a pretty esteemed person of that time, and he was appointed Qazi by the emperor. And the place where he settled in, he named that place Islampur. This 70 miles from Lahore, the area where he settled in. This area was named as Islampur. And since he was the Qazi of that area, meaning the mayor of that area, this area used to be called as Islampur Qazi. And in the Indian Punjabi language, that Islampur Qazi changed into Islampur Qaziyan, that area is of the Qaziyan, that's how they would refer to that area. And then the Islampur dropped over the years, and only Qadian left. And we all know that the word Dwad is in the Punjabi way can sometimes be pronounced as Dal as well. We say Wala Dwalin sometimes as the word Dwal. So the correct pronunciation of Dwad is somewhere in between Dwal and Dal, but with the ease of saying it, people started to call it Qaziyan, and then from Qaziyan it became Qadian, and that's where the word Qadian comes from. So in the next slide is the geographical map of the area. Samarkand is right there in the middle, so just to give you an idea where that place is from, where Mirza Hadi Beg migrated or traveled to India. After that, as it was said that the family or the ancestors of Promised Messiah ﷺ settled there, there was a person named Mirza Faiz Muhammad who was appointed as Haft Hazari. Haft Hazari is somebody who is authorized by the emperor to keep an army of 7,000 men. So he was certainly a person of high esteem, and he had that 7,000 soldier army. But after the Mughal decline, Mughal dynasty's decline, the area of Qadian and the surrounding area, which had about 85 villages or so, which was 60 square mile radius, became a semi or quasi-independent area. It wasn't really under the Mughal rule because Mughal Empire was declining. So it became a quasi-independent area, and Mirza Gul Muhammad became the leader of that quasi-independent land, which had about 85 villages, and he was a man of very high esteem. He was a very righteous and generous man. He patronized learning and paid stipend to about 500 people, so he was a very learned man himself, and he promoted education. Hundreds of people ate at his table, so he had a langar that he ran. He passed away in 1800. His son was Mirza Ata Muhammad, but during this time, the Punjab was starting to get under the rule of Sikh. And we all know the famous Sikh who ruled Punjab, Ranjit Singh. He had invaded that area, that 85 villages that Mirza Gul Muhammad had the authority over. During the Sikh rule, that area was taken away from the family of Mirza Gul Muhammad. And Mirza Ata Muhammad actually had to leave with his family from Qadian. So none was left during the time of Sikh rule. Qadian had to be left by the family. And in 1818, Ranjit Singh allowed Mirza Ghulam Murtaza, who was the son of Mirza Ata Muhammad. When Ata Muhammad passed away, his son wanted to bring his body back to Qadian and wanted to bury him there. So Ranjit Singh allowed that. And then Mirza Ghulam Murtaza also served in the Sikh army and rendered some excellent services. Because of that, in 1834 to 35, which is about the time of the birth of the Promised Messiah ﷺ, Ranjit Singh restored 5 villages to Mirza Ghulam Murtaza, who was the father of promised Messiah ﷺ. So the family got back to Qadian. And after Ranjit Singh's death in 1839, Sikh slowly lost the power, and then later India came under the British rule. Mirza Ghulam Murtaza, who we know is the father of Hazrat Masih Maud, he was a physician, a poet, and was very magnanimous towards his enemies. Because what happened was that these 5 villages that Ranjit Singh gave back to Mirza Ghulam Murtaza Sahib, there was so much other ancestral land that they owned, the 85 villages that we talked about. And some of the relatives of Mirza Ghulam Murtaza, his brothers, Ghulam Muhyiddin's sons and his family, they were also the participants among those ancestral land that they had. So he had to fight a lot of lawsuits, which we know about, that even Promised Messiah ﷺ throughout his life had to undergo some of those challenges which had to do with the ancestral land. So that came from this background, that those 5 villages were awarded to Mirza Ghulam Murtaza, but his cousins and his uncles were always fighting on that land. Masjid-e-Aqsa that we know is actually built by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Murtaza, which was Hazrat Masih Maud father. And he bought that land from a Sikh for 700 rupees, which was a handsome amount at that time. He was married to Chirag Bibi. We all know the mother of Promised Messiah ﷺ. Chirag Bibi was a generous, hospitable, cheerful and good-hearted lady of exemplary piety. She passed away in 1868. Hazrat Ghulam Murtaza Sahib and Chirag Bibi Sahiba had many children, and some of those children passed away in the young age. And in 1828, 7 years before the birth of the promised Messiah ﷺ, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Qadir, who was the elder brother of Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, he was born, and he was probably the only children before the promised Messiah who lived a longer life. And promised Messiah ﷺ's mother always used to pray that Allah Ta'ala give her a child who would live longer, because other children had died at a young age. So by the grace of Allah, on February 13th, 1835, on a Friday, Hazrat Masih Maud was born, and he was born as a twin. And he mentions it in his books as well. The other twin was a baby girl who was born before the promised Messiah ﷺ, and her name was Jannah. But she soon passed away right after the birth. Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ was a wonderful child in his childhood. He once had an experience of tending to the goats, which is said to be, the profession of the prophets. Many prophets were shepherds during their lifetime. It so happened that one day Hazrat Masih Maud was playing in the courtyard, and this person was tending to his goats, and Hazrat Masih Maud needed something, so he asked him that, can you bring this thing from my house? And the person said, well, I have these goats to tend, so why don't you tend them for me? So for a little bit, promised Messiah ﷺ tended those goats. So in symbolism, then he also took part in this sunnah of the prophets, that they are shepherds, or they have done the work of shepherd in their lifetime. At one time he was playing with his playmate, and this is the time of a very young age, perhaps 8, 9 years old or even less, that he was playing with this child, a girl, who later became his first wife, and he said to him something very beautiful. He said that, pray for me that I be granted the grace of prayers, that Allah Ta'ala accepts my prayers. So a young child has an inclination towards the love of God, towards the prayer. This goes to show that from a very young age, he was very much inclined towards prayers. When he was about 6 or 7 years old, his father Back in the day, there wasn't any structured and organized school system, and people would get basic education through just getting tutors. So Promised Messiah ﷺ also had few tutors who taught him some basic recitation of the Holy Quran and some basic knowledge of ahadith. And few of these tutors that he had, Fazl Ilahi Sahib, he belonged to a Hanafi school of jurisprudence. Then at the age of 10, he read Hazrat Masih Maud had a teacher, Fazl Ahmad, who taught him Arabic grammar, and then he was from Ahl Hadith, and then at the age of 17 or 18, he had a Shia tutor who taught him more Arabic grammar and some logic. Now this is interesting. Hazrat Masih Maud has also mentioned in his books that if you look at the name of these people, Fazl Ilahi, Fazl Ahmad, I mean these are all, the name itself means the blessings. And it is a symbolism that Allah Ta'ala himself was basically providing that education to Hazrat Masih Maud. Now some of the opponents, they raise this objection that Anbiya or the prophets, they are taught by Allah himself, and how come Hazrat Mirza Sahib had these tutors? So this should be remembered that it is not a rule or it is not a principle that everything that Anbiya know is through Allah Ta'ala. Because a simple argument is that how do Anbiya learn a language? They learn a language by listening to the people. That's how they learn to talk. So it is not a rule that everything is taught to Anbiya by Allah himself, even though Allah Ta'ala guides the whole process. And it also is very evident from one of the hadiths of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, where some Sahaba were doing some pollination between the date trees, and he said, "Why are you doing this? Why are you striking one over the other?" And they didn't do it that year, and then they didn't get the date. The date didn't grow that year. So the point is that the formal education, which is just, or the customary education, which is just some grammar, learning about the basics of things, yes, that he learned from some tutors, but all the other knowledge, the spiritual knowledge and the divine knowledge that Allah Ta'ala guided him, is only given to him by Allah Ta'ala. And he corrected some of the major concepts that were prevailing at that time. You know, jihad is a big concept that he corrected. Wafat Masih, that people believe that Jesus Alayhi Salam has died, he corrected that concept among Islam. All the bid'ats that were happening in the Muslims, he corrected those, all through the divine guidance. And then he was not an Arab, and yet he wrote numerous books in Arabic, and he delivered Khutbah Ilhamiyah completely in Arabic, and he says that in one night 40,000 roots of Arabic was taught to him over one night. So all those things that have to do with the religion and the explanation of religion and with the spiritual nourishment of the ummah, they were all taught to him by Allah Ta'ala. But some of these customary things, if he has learned it from some people, it does not mean that Allah Ta'ala was not taking care of him from that childhood. He was fond of his father's library, spent a lot of time in the mosque. He learned writing and swimming. His first marriage was with Hurmat Bibi. She was his maternal uncle's daughter. He had two sons through that marriage early on. Mirza Fazl Ahmad Sahib and Mirza Sultan Ahmad Sahib was the elder. Mirza Fazl Ahmad Sahib was younger. Mirza Fazl Ahmad Sahib did not accept Ahmadiyyat. He passed away in 1904 during the lifetime of Promised Messiah ﷺ. However, Mirza Sultan Ahmad Sahib did not accept Ahmadiyyat in the life of the promised Messiah, but he later became Ahmadi during the time of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam. And his son, Mirza Sultan Ahmad Sahab's son, Mirza Aziz Ahmad Sahab, actually was a Sahabi. He accepted the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam. So, as it was mentioned that there was a dispute about the ancestral land that Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam and his family owned. There were disputes over it, and it lingered on for a very long time throughout the lifetime of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Murtaza Sahib. And he even involved Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, because he was one of his sons in that matter. So he had to travel to Lahore, to Dalhousie, different court hearings, and being part of those lawsuits, which he didn't really like, but he had to do it as an obligation to his father. And he was totally disconnected with any of these worldly things, and he was not interested in any of the worldly pursuits and acquiring these lands and becoming, to indulge in these things. And Mirza Ghulam Murtaza Sahib, who was his father, he got, really worried about this sometimes, and he was upset and disappointed that Hazur does not really take any interest in these worldly matters. So in that effort, his father tried to get him a job. So Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam did actually do a job as a government post in one of the courts as a reader. In 1863, he went to Sialkot for that job. And while he was in Sialkot, he stayed there for 5 years, from 1863 to 1868. And during this time, this is also very important for him to experience the world firsthand, to experience how things are done, how things are operated. And he made a lot of connections over there. He made a lot of connections with Christians. He made a lot of connections with Aryas in Sialkot. And he got a glimpse of how the life operates from a material standpoint, so that it gave him a good perspective on life in general. So, for example, there were some elementary English classes that readers had to attend and the clerks had to attend, and this was offered by the British government. Hazur went and took some of those classes. He took part in various debates. He was very much a learned person, and he was very interested in intellectual discussions. So he would get indulged in these intellectual discussions with Christians on the concept of Trinity, on the concept of salvation, atonement, and those type of things. He did appear in a law exam, Mukhtar, which is the name of the exam. He did not pass the exam, And later on, at that time, Punjab University was getting established, and somebody asked him that, why don't you become a teacher at Punjab University? And he declined the offer. He didn't want to do it. With his pay, he used to help the poor and needy, so much so that his father had to send him extra money to really go through his expenses while he was in Sialkot. And he was very much, aloof to whatever was happening around him in terms of society and getting involved in this world. And he wasn't very fond of going out and socializing with people. And he mentioned himself that he liked the life of seclusion, and he was alone in company and single in a crowd. That's his words. And one time, a person visited him from Qadian, where his mom sent him 4 dresses, and this was one of the barbers of the family, and he told him that, look, this life in Sialkot is almost like a jail to me. I really don't enjoy this worldly things. And he gave one of the suits to his barber. So then he returned to Qadian because his father needed him back in Qadian for the family matters. So he returned to Qadian in 1868. He devoted his time to reading Holy Quran. Some of the books that he read frequently are Bukhari, Masnavi, Rumi, and Dalail al-Khairat. These are some of the books that he repeatedly read. And then he also subscribed to some local newspapers, and he wanted to be aware of the beliefs of others, and also wanted to understand what others object about Islam. So he subscribed to these local newspapers that are listed here, and some of these newspapers will come up again and again. When Hazrat Masih Maud al-Islam started writing the articles and books and debates, he would publish these articles and these debates in these newspapers. So Safir of Amritsar is a famous one. Agni Hotri's magazine, Hindu Bandhu, is a famous one. Mansoor Muhammadi, that's where he published the announcement of Barahin-e Ahmadiyya. He was involved in poetry, as we know. He liked to. He used to spend his time in seclusion. He did have Persian poetry before his ministry, which is known as Durr-e Maknoon, which is called the Hidden Pearl, and that was published after his demise. And his takhallus, his pen name was Farrukh. He also visited some holy men of the area, and he would request them for prayers, and he would request them for prayers about the victory of Islam, because he was very much overwhelmed with this idea that Arya Samaj and the Christians have dominated the land, and they're preaching their teachings to Muslims, and majority of the Muslims were converting from Islam to Christianity or Hinduism, and he had a big pain about that. So he would meet with some of these noble people of his time. Maulvi Abdullah Ghazni is one of them, who was in Amritsar, and Sharafuddin Sahib, he was near Talabpur. He would go meet with these people, and he would request them for prayers for the safeguard of Islam and the victory of Islam. So one incident, now Promised Messiah ﷺ, around 1869, he is 34 years old at this time, and he is becoming known to the society, to the public, and especially the people in Qadian. And Maulvi Muhammad Hussain Batalvi, who was from Batala, he had done his Maulvi Fazil exam, and he had come back to Batala, and he prescribed to the Ahle Hadith school of thought. So one of the people in Qadian, he wanted the Promised Messiah ﷺ to go and debate with Maulvi Muhammad Hussain Batalvi. So Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ went there, and he took part in that debate. Maulvi Muhammad Hussain Batalvi started the debate off with his introductory remarks, and Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ really did not find anything objectionable in what Muhammad Hussain Batalvi had to say, and he came back and he said that I don't really have a dispute with what he's saying, and he left the debate. And the people who took them there, they got very embarrassed that, look, we brought Mirza Sahib all the way to debate with this Ahle Hadith alim who has recently graduated from the school, and we wanted to show some superiority, and Mirza Sahib just came back without saying anything. So this incident, and this incident is mentioned by Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ himself. He said, a wonderful revelation was vouchsafed to me in Urdu. Now look, he is 34 years old right now, and he himself is narrating this thing. He's saying, it happened in this way. Maulvi Ali Saad Muhammad Hussain of Batala, who had at one time been my fellow student, came back to Batala after completing his divinity studies. The people of Batala looked at him on account of some of his notions and ideas. One person was very insistent that I should debate a point in dispute with Maulvi Muhammad Hussain. Yielding to his insistence, I accompanied this man in the evening to the home of Maulvi Muhammad Hussain and found him in the company of his father in the mosque. To summarize, upon hearing the explanation of Maulvi Muhammad Hussain, I concluded that there was nothing objectionable in his statement, and consequently, for the sake and pleasure of Allah, I declined to enter into a debate with him. The same night, the revelation came to me from Allah the Noble with reference to my declining to enter into the debate, and the revelation is, तेरा खुदा तेरे इस फेल से राजी हुआ और वो तुझे बहुत बरकत देगा, यहाँ तक कि बादशाह तेरे कपड़ों से बरकत ढूंढेंगे. Hazrat Masih Maud is a 34-year-old young man, and Allah Ta'ala has revealed to him this grandeur prophecy and a revelation which amounts to a prophecy. Your God is well pleased with that what you have done. He will bless you greatly, so much so that kings will seek blessing from your garments. Thereafter, in a vision, I was also shown, as Masih Maud writes, those kings. They were riding upon horses. So we can see that at a very young age, the connection and Hazrat Masih Maud had with Allah the Almighty is very evident from this narration that I have read before you. There was a Hindu Arya, Sharampat Rai, who was the secretary of the Arya Samaj of Qadian. So Arya Samaj was established as a community to preach Hinduism, to preach the Arya Samaj. And their secretary, who was in Qadian, his name was Sharampat Rai, and he did not believe in the prophecies of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And he always used to argue with Masih Maud ﷺ that the prophecies of Holy Prophet ﷺ have not come true. One day what happened was that his brother, Sharampat Rai's brother, got into jail over a dispute. And Sharampat Rai, he knew, there was, this is where Holy Quran says that have I, it shows as a witness that to the Anbiya that have I not lived my life before you? That these people who were not Muslims, who were staunch opponents, and they were preaching, their religion against Islam, even they knew that this is a man of God, this is a noble man. So Sharampat Rai came to Masih Maud ﷺ and he asked him to request him for prayers for his brother, that his brother be released from the jail and be acquitted from that lawsuit. So there was another person among his brother who was also captured in the jail. And he said that if you tell me beforehand what's going to happen to the case of my brother, I will believe that the prophecies of Holy Prophet ﷺ come true because you believe in Holy Prophet ﷺ. So he made it sort of a challenge to Masih Maud ﷺ that look, my brother is in jail and I want you to give me the future news, what's going to happen to him. So Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ prayed, and Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ told him that right now this case is with the chief court. This case will be delegated down to the lower court, and in the lower court your brother's sentence will be halved, and the other person who is captured with your brother, his sentence will not be reduced, but your brother's sentence will be reduced. So this was, Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ said that God told me that this is going to happen. And Sharampat Rai, Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ told Sharampat Rai about this. So next day people started this rumor, because the case actually did come down from the chief court to the lower court, but then people started this rumor that both these men, Sharampat Rai's brother and his friend, have been acquitted. Whereas Masih Maud has said that he will not be acquitted, his sentence will be reduced to half, and the other person's sentence will not be reduced. So Hazrat Masih Maud got worried that night that, what has happened, I have told these people, and now all of a sudden these people will think that I told them a lie. So that night Allah Ta'ala revealed to Hazrat Masih Maud that La takhaf, innaka antal ala, fear not, surely you will be on top. And next morning people found out that actually was a rumor, and what really happened was that his brother's sentence was reduced to half and the other person's sentence was not reduced. So Allah Ta'ala made Hazrat Masih Maud victorious there. And before we close this, I want to mention one last thing on this slide here, and then we'll leave it for tonight. In 1974, this is when Hazrat Masih Maud is only 39 years old. I'm sorry, 1874. I made a mistake there. 1874. In a dream, I saw an angel seated on an elevated platform in the guise of a boy. In his hand, he was holding a pure loaf of bread, which was very bright. He gave it to me and said, "ये तेरे लिए और तेरे साथ के दरवेशों के लिए है." What a famous revelation, we all know about it. But look at the time of this, 1874. He's 39 years old. I saw this dream at a time when I was not all known, nor had I put forth any claim, nor was there any group of darwesh with me. But now I have a large amount of people who have voluntarily chosen to put their faith above the world and have thus reduced themselves to the position of darwesh, having migrated from their homes and having separated themselves from their relatives and friends. They have taken up permanent abode near me. I had interpreted the loaf of bread as meaning that God Himself will provide for me and for my followers, and that we will not be rendered anxious on account of lack of provision. And we all know Langar Masih Maud to this date, how it is serving not only the community of the Messiah salam, but the surrounding population as well. So this is just up until 1874, where Hazrat Masih Maud is 39 years old. But just these few incidences goes on to show the level of piety and the strength of Masih Maud connection with Allah Ta'ala, how strong it was, and how Allah Ta'ala was preparing him for a grandeur task which was to come in the future years. So I will pick this up, inshallah, from the next slide, which is about the demise of Promised Messiah ﷺ. His father passed away in 1876. So we are up until 1874. Inshallah, I'll pick this up from here next time. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.